Hello, everyone. Depending upon where you are, good afternoon. I am Jazzy Jones, and I'm so grateful to be your special guest for this month's Hangout with Convo. And I'd also like to introduce my friend who's along with me.
Hello, everyone. I am Dejanay. My sign name is DJ, and I am thrilled to be here this evening to talk about one of my favorite holidays.
That's right. And this year has been significant in terms of the celebration of Juneteenth. We are going to talk a little bit more about what Juneteenth as a day is about, and we're going to share some of our experiences, our thoughts on the significance of the holiday, and some other modern events, recent events that have impacted us, that have raised our eye awareness. So first of all, what is Juneteenth? Let's address that first.
Well, Juneteenth, also known as Independence Day or Emancipation Day. The sign in American Sign Language is J19th, which is short for June 19th.
That's right. Everyone is talking a lot about the history of Juneteenth, and you just mentioned emancipation. So it's something that I didn't learn in grade school,
Right.
if at all, very little. So this, as an event, Juneteenth, is something that I learned about from family. I'm originally from Buffalo, New York. And in Buffalo, it's one of the towns who's hosted one of the largest Juneteenth celebrations in the country, and they've done it annually. So, of course, Buffalo, being such a large city, is huge, and there is music, dancing, festivities, shopping, fairs. Now, of course, last year's celebration was canceled because of the pandemic. And this year will be virtual again, unfortunately. But that's what some of my first exposure to Juneteenth was as I was growing up from where I'm from. And we'd like to talk a little bit more about the history of Juneteenth. I'd like to see how much you know and how you learned about Juneteenth, DJ.
Of course, I agree with you. In school, they didn't really talk a lot about it. I know that I wish that they had mentioned more about slavery and Blacks being enslaved, and really spotlighting the experiences. Who made that happen, which was Abraham Lincoln. He was the one that made that happen, and they spotlight him. So I felt as though that's not the point, right? That's not the point at all. It was originally in 1863 that those individuals who were enslaved, they were in the Confederate States, they became free. So when they signed, it was over 3 million individuals that were enslaved. And again, it wasn't that we were originally free. It was actually kept hidden for, I think, about several years, that it wasn't even declared that Blacks were actually free until 1865. So imagine that. So I remember General Lee, he was the one that surrendered and then gave that over to one of the other soldiers, who basically, those soldiers went over to Galveston, Texas, and let everyone know that they were now free indeed. And so then that's how we knew about the history back in school.
When we look at the research and what has been shared, there have been several versions as to why Texas was the last to find out about emancipation. But one of the versions was that the messenger, who actually initially was supposed to declare this emancipation, were murdered. So for selfish reasons, the Confederate or the Southern slaveholders wanted to continue to have their plantations populated with enslaved persons. So Literally the messengers were killed until they could not withhold that information any longer. And then the Union soldiers appeared to finally let all the enslaved Blacks know that they were emancipated.
Right. And the Confederate States, they were the ones that the unions were basically keeping it to themselves. Like you said, they were selfish. They wanted to keep the slaves, right? They wanted Blacks to continue to be enslaved. So they were upset that they were actually going to become free.
You can only imagine being in that period of time, 1863, and waiting until 1865. You're celebrating, you're in shock, you're in awe, you're dumbfounded, you're thinking about, well, what is that going to be like? And I wonder what it was like for them.
And it's interesting because the moment that they found out the news, they started praying, they started celebrating, they started rejoicing. They had a humongous feast. They started just praising and being excited that they were actually free from being enslaved.
And of course, I would be just as excited to get out of there, but getting out of there means what? Where do you go? There were so many enslaved persons who wanted to migrate north and did, in fact, migrate north. Some stayed. So it was an interesting thing about choice. How can an individual make their own way with their family? Now, personally, I would leave. I would get out of Dodge.
I was doing some research not too long ago, and I'm wondering, right, after one knows that they're no longer enslaved, what's on their mind? What are they thinking? And I was learning that the freed slaves actually started to raise money for charity reasons, to buy 10,000 acres just to celebrate their true independence. So that those land and that acre that they wanted to celebrate on, that truly was the biggest moment for them to really go and celebrate Juneteenth. And that was located in Houston, Texas.
That's right, a true emancipation. And those areas that were purchased by those individuals who were freed, they look very nice now. They're still there. You can actually visit them. You can actually go down to Galveston, Texas, and see some of those areas and regions where those enslaved or emancipated individuals began to celebrate then. That's where it all started. And it didn't happen fast in terms of everyone in the country recognizing it and celebrating Juneteenth. It was a slow and emerging process to get it recognized. It was a slow process, but Texas happened to be first.
Right. It wasn't an overnight feat. It was actually, I'm sure, quite frustrating as well to start celebrating Juneteenth. For instance, with my family, I started a while ago. And so I remember my mom had told me, she said, look, a lot of the states don't recognize Juneteenth as a holiday. And I thought, well, Mom, why? I mean, I felt as though I have been brainwashed to celebrate July 4th annually as a Black individuals. And everyone is all in for celebrating July 4th, but why not June 19th?
Our Independence Day needs to be recognized, and Juneteenth is it.
Absolutely.
In fact, it's more valuable in my mind than July 4th.
Right. It's not opinion, it's facts, right? We were still enslaved when they were celebrating their July 4th. And so it makes sense that we should actually celebrate our quote unquote July 4th, which is really June 19th for us.
That's right. I can't agree more. So let's talk about celebration. How did you celebrate Juneteenth growing up? Were you celebrating ever since you were a child, or did your family do something? Was there a tradition? Who told you that you needed to celebrate and acknowledge Juneteenth? What did that look like for you?
Well, I'd have to say my mom. She would always host a gathering. And we did host things like, for instance, like Ramadan parties, or we would have Kwanzaa parties. She definitely decided that she wanted to celebrate also June 19th. The various holidays were out there. June 19th was incorporated into that. So we would have gatherings like a barbecue. We would have prayer sessions. We would make known what we were thankful for. And we would also sometimes go over to different states. For instance, Houston. I know last year I would had the opportunity to go to Louisiana, and it
Really?
was the best. Oh my gosh, the fireworks, people were dancing, the food was just, I mean, it was dripping from your tongues in terms of how delicious it was. I wish I could go every year, but this year I decided, I mean, now that it's a federal holiday, I felt that I'm thinking about going to where I grew up, where the Black Wall Street was in Alabama. I'm thinking about going there just because it's so, June 19th is celebrated in such an immense way there. And so that's where I'm actually thinking about going. So I'm actually going to take my children with me as well. I'm very excited about that. They
I
actually
love that you
have,
make it an annual thing.
yes. I mean, we're going to maybe have just various events that were happening. We're looking forward to going to.
Well, there's a second part to my question I wanted to ask you. In terms of your family, you have two boys?
Four, actually, four.
My bad, four. I should not overlook that. Well, in terms of your family, what are you teaching your children traditionally? What are you passing on to them?
That's a rich question. With my four boys, they are multiracial. I did an ancestry test not too long ago, and I'm really teaching them to understand the history of our family and their ancestors. And so I'm teaching them. Sorry about that. This is my water bottle. Give me a second here. Sorry. But anyways, I'm teaching them around Juneteenth, right? So while they are still learning about Juneteenth, they're also struggling with their identity as well. I know my oldest, he looks very white passing, but he identifies as Black, period. My second child is still struggling. He actually was asked in school, so where are you from? And he says, I don't know. And so, I mean, just everything going on with the media and then what people are teaching their children, I think it's really important to have more exposure for my children in terms of Juneteenth, Kwanzaa, and other Black celebratory events. I know in the past, they wouldn't be interested, but now that, you know, independence is here, June 19th is being celebrated, I want to bring him to Tulsa. I definitely want to make sure that he's there with me at that museum so he can see the events that have happened, the survivors, our ancestors, what they went through, so he can get a sense of his identity, his pride, his culture. I think that's really important because today there's nothing wrong with being Black. Absolutely nothing.
That's right, not at all.
It doesn't matter what your friends say, but we come from ancestries of amazing kings and queens. And it's hard for us to just ignore that. We have to understand that, and that's where we're going.
We've built the country, we've survived so many overwhelming hardships, different kinds of oppression, and there's a legacy. We've contributed so much, and we still continue to contribute. Things are not ideal yet. We still have a long way to go. But incorporating this holiday and acknowledging it and celebrating it, recognizing it, making that a part of our lives is a significant step. One, to acknowledge the pain, but also celebrate and participate in the joy. That's right.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, because I remember in a celebration I was reading on Facebook last night, and there was a lot of discussion around June 19th becoming recognized as a federal holiday. And this was just last night. And some of the comments that people were making, it wasn't even worth reading. I mean, they were horrific. I was realizing some of them were saying, well, why do we need to have more spotlight on them? They're just complaining. They already have Kwanzaa. And I was reading the comments in disgust.
Mm-hmm.
I just felt like they don't have any clue or understanding about the significance of this holiday. And they don't understand how people have been brainwashed to understand one side of history.
You're absolutely right. Absolutely right. I've learned so much about myself in terms of how much self-care I need to protect myself from that kind of vitriol. But
Absolutely.
definitely, if I get exposed too much, I will go off, but I'm not going to go there. I'm going to stay focused on how excited I am about some of the new developments. Recently, we realized that the Senate just passed this into law, that Juneteenth is a federal holiday, but I pause. I'll be candid with you. I don't feel I'm cautious. I'm cautious about our welfare. I do have pride, of course, but is this going to be another holiday that's going to be put in the corporate space, that's going to be marketed and exploited? Or are people going to genuinely and authentically understand and respect the spirit of Juneteenth and what it means? So I'm conservative and cautious, tentative about it. At the same time, very excited. So it's a complex place that I'm in. Uh, I do appreciate that it's been recognized at the federal level. But then you got some other places that are just not tolerant.
Right. And you also have the spotlight of Black Lives Matter and that there's more recognition for equality. Yet, you know, they're just saying, "Oh, well, maybe Juneteenth is good enough. They're getting all that they're asking for." And so it's almost a distraction from the real issues.
That's right.
It's almost as yes, we've been celebrating, but at the same time, people are acting as, oh, they're the savior of them. Oh, well, we're doing this, and that for them. And maybe if we give them June 19th, then, that will quiet them down or calm them down. But they don't realize that we've been celebrating this for years. This is not new to us. I know
Right.
many people may not realize that, but for us, it's not new to us. And so you're actually distracting and deterring from the actual goal and issues that are at hand. So,
Right.
I mean, we still have more work to do. This is not where we can sit back on our laurels and be happy we have Juneteenth.
And it starts with education. Yes, clearly there's so much work to do because I did not learn what I know now in school. And these days, parents are concerned about what their kids are learning in school to the point that they have to educate and advocate for quality education. There are states, as I mentioned before, like Florida and other states and areas that are in an uproar about critical race theory, and they're in opposition to this history being taught in school. So there you go. We are so far along, then we are not so far. Well, what are they teaching their children about the holiday? If they're
Right.
in opposition, what's going to be going into
Right.
their little mind?
Right. And that's where I'm so confused. We talk about 1877 and Independence Day and the 4th of July and all of, the British, took over and we're free from them. And we have an annual celebration for the 4th of July. But, the people are buying fireworks. They're ready to, all go all out for the 4th of July. But I have a problem with celebrating our Independence Day. It's almost like we don't have the same meaning as it does for 4th of July. Why is one celebrated at a higher level than the other? And so that's just telling me that, you are American first. That's really what it's implying, that you should be celebrating American history first as opposed to our cultural history. And so I feel like, well, the slaves were American, weren't they? The
Yes.
enslaved people were Americans.
This is an interesting conversation to have because I've had it with my mother recently. And mom and I talk about which holiday is going to be hosted by whomever in the family. And she started talking about July 4th, when we're going to have a get together on July 4th. I was like, why are we going to get together on July 4th? Now, my mom hangs an American flag right at the front of the house, and I'm asking her and challenging her, well, why? Why are you celebrate July 4th, Mom? We get into it a little bit.
Yep.
Now, granted, it's not a perfect world out there.
Because everyone
And
celebrates it.
But she has her right to take pride in what she considers the aspects of her country that she has pride in. We have a very complex heritage in that we have literally built this country out of our own blood, sweat, and tears.
It was built on the backs of Black people.
That's right. So we built this country. There would be no America without us, point blank. Am I wrong? Without our labor, let alone free labor, uh, horrific circumstances. Uh, so she argued with me about this premise of celebrating July 4th as African Americans, and she can do her, and I'll do me. But what's important is that we're going to have a barbecue. It's going to be out. It's going to be loud. I'm so looking forward to being there with my family this Saturday. And that's what I'm going to be doing, celebrating with my family.
Yeah, I did want to make it clear that, America still has a lot of work to do, period.
That's right.
And it's not like we're saying that we hate America. That's that's not our narrative.
Not at all.
It's just that we're fortunate to live here, and we have to think about other countries and what they're going through and the disproportionality that's happening there. And we are blessed to live here. Yet, at the same time, we must recognize that living here, there's always going to be continual work to be done. All of us this is all of our home here in America.
Yes. And there's healing to be done as well, considering all the things that have happened in recent years. Amen. We don't need to become too political about it. Let's get back to June 19th. Sometimes it's so easy to get derailed into the politics of things. So excuse me for that. So, Dejanay, we've shared a little bit about other ways that other people celebrate Juneteenth, having cookouts, gatherings, card games, food, of course.
Dominoes, we got to add in dominoes. Yes.
Food is the language of love, and the dominoes, true.
Yes, when I was in Louisiana last year, I remember they had gumbo. Ooh, I mean, she was just throwing in everything from sausages to rice to crabs, you name it. The spices, it was just some Cajun spice all in that gumbo. The jambalaya, the mac and cheese. I mean, I just felt like there was just, this should be every holiday. This is how we should celebrate. I mean, our food is like nobody else's food. Our food in this country, we just need to celebrate and have a holiday for our food.
That's true. And as if the food would be awful. No, not at all. We don't do garbage.
No, I mean, that's how we celebrate. I mean, our food brings us together. And when you go to a barbecue, you got to take that plate home with you. Get that doggy bag.
You show up with your Tupperware and leave with it full.
And you bring that foil, honey. And you bring your foil, you wrap that paper plate, and you bring it home with you.
Yeah, got all kind of to-go boxes. We got stacks of them from the restaurants that we just take home. Make sure that we're taking care of ourselves on the way out. Now, this year, we're not going to go too big, and unfortunately, we don't want to have too much left over. We're going to go a little bit conservative. We're just going to cook the conservative right amount. And when it's all gone, y'all go. Y'all got to be gone because it's still a pandemic. We don't want things hanging around too long.
This year, I'm not going to cook. I'm going to Tulsa, and I know they have all the types of food down there. So, I mean, maybe I'll be bringing more food back home. We'll see.
Now, in Tulsa, do they have outdoor festivals near the museum? What's that like?
So the museum is inside, but they will actually have an open doors at the museum, so you can kind of enter whenever you want to. You can read the history of what has happened, the history behind Tulsa. I know not many people actually know what happened there, and so they give people the opportunity to learn about that.
I just learned a lot myself.
Right. This year, they're actually really fixated a lot on Tulsa. It's really new to people, which is a complete shocker. I know.
And 100 years ago is when it happened. And now 100 years isn't a long time ago.
Yeah, one of the histories behind Tulsa is that they had one young boy who happened to be taking a stroll, and he was minding his own business, and a white woman, he passed the white woman, or she just happened to, make a quiet sound, right? The little boy, that is. And she accused him of catcalling her. And that became a huge issue. And the neighborhood knew about it. And so basically, she left and people heard about it, and people were just ready to actually go into that area and make a huge uproar about it. So that happened in Tulsa.
Yep, and a riot started and was burned down in 2 days. Now, this area was called the Black Wall Street, where Black people lived in luxury, and it was completely decimated.
Yes, it was self-sufficient before. We could never recover from after that.
They still have not recovered from that area, but we still find our ways to celebrate. Even though there aren't going to be large cookouts this year, you can still support Black-owned business, because there are individuals that are Black-owned businesses, that have Black-owned businesses, that are restaurants, and they're family supported. So we can support them, support all of these institutions that have supported us.
I'm bringing all my cash and I'm trying to buy all the Black-owned business products.
That's right. Just celebrate by giving your proceeds to these institutions.
Right. It's a great opportunity to support Black-owned businesses. That's what this whole week is about.
Yes, indeed, I agree. That's something that I'm making a choice about every day, to be mindful of the so smaller communities that have helped me. And it's not just something that I give, lip service to, so to speak, just once a year or for a particular holiday. I'm making a lifestyle, making a way of life. And that way, our community is sustained, elevated, and growing. We need to consistently support each other, not just on incidental moments. So that's how we really show the value for each other in different ways, to recognize Juneteenth, not just on the day, but all the time. When we look for places to conduct our business, are we thinking about how we can support, in our case, Black-owned businesses? And make sure that we're doing something that is consistent with your ideals and beliefs. So whether it's identifying with Black-owned businesses, Black and brown, LGBTQ plus, especially considering this is Pride Month, we want to be mindful to be consistent with all of our minority communities in all of those spaces. And we always want to make sure that we learn what's behind the culture, what's the history of why we do things. We always want to make sure that we're going to consistently celebrate Juneteenth as well. Even though some of us are just finding out, well, dive in. Some of you are watching this event right now. You might be celebrating for the first time this year. Go ahead, go all out, make it a thing. Go off, get your popcorn ready, celebrate, get your fireworks ready. Yes, indeed. It's something that we want you to celebrate, but also be mindful of, that it may be a new tradition to you, but it's a one worthy of investing in. So we are going to be wrapping up really soon. I'm thinking about any final thoughts that we can bring to this conversation. We want to thank everyone who's been watching this program to talk about Juneteenth. It's a handful to say Juneteenth. And we also want to thank everyone for being in solidarity with us, regardless of who you are in your background.
Right. Just around why we should be in solidarity is that everyone's a part of us and we are a part of them. We are history. We are here together as one. And to celebrate this holiday, it's letting us know that you actually see us as value. You have value within us and you want to invest in us. And you see us also as equal. I still have no problem celebrating the 4th of July because, again, I understand that that's still a big part of American history. Mm-hmm. At the same time, I need others to understand the other side of the coin and to understand that our history we are sharing with you and that this is something that we all in solidarity should understand and celebrate.
And I do plan to celebrate and go out loud. And people are going to let me be loud. I will not be inhibited. I am not a timid person.
That's the only way to do it. Absolutely.
I will not be kept in a back room anywhere.
Especially this year. Especially.
That's right. Yes. So all over the U.S. We are celebrating because it's federally acknowledged. It is recognized, and it's about time. That's right. And it should be recognized in every state. New York State just acknowledged it this year.
South Dakota. Come on now, South Dakota. What are you doing? South Dakota.
If the feds recognize it, it's a done deal. So take the next step, people. And we've taken a big step. We are going to celebrate. We have acknowledged this, and we have the strength and the courage to do so. So that is the mic drop moment. That's what we should leave on. Thank you so much, Dejanay, for spending this time with me and telling us your story about Juneteenth and your journey to recognize this day. I hope you have a wonderful Juneteenth and a wonderful weekend.
Yes, thank you so much. I will definitely take videos and pictures, and I will share it on my Instagram, Deaf Flower, my handle. I really thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate this conversation.
I'll be looking forward to seeing this content, and thank you, Convo, for setting up this platform for us. Y'all have a good evening, and that's all she wrote. Have a happy Juneteenth.
Yes, happy Juneteenth, everyone.